Everyone walked past the homeless man sitting in the cold. Some looked away. Some laughed. Some pretended he didn't exist. But one young man stopped. He didn't know the old man was watching him closely. He didn't know this single decision would bring 4 black SUVs to his door days later. And he definitely didn't know that the money he helped was about to change his life forever. This is the story of how one small act of kindness shocked everyone. The man no one saw. Daniel had learned one hard lesson early in life. The world doesn't slow down for struggling people. At 27, he worked long hours at a small warehouse, lifting boxes until his arms ached, earning just enough to survive. Rent was always late. Food was always limited. Dreams were something he stopped talking about years ago. That evening, rain poured down as Daniel walked home, his jacket thin and worn. In his hand was a small paper bag. His dinner, a cheap sandwich and a bottle of water. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. As he passed an old restaurant near the corner, he noticed a man sitting against the wall. The man looked old, much older than his years. His clothes were torn. His beard was gray and untrimmed. His hands trembled as he held a cardboard sign that read, "Homeless, hungry, any help?" People passed him without stopping. One woman pulled her child closer. A man shook his head in disgust. Someone dropped a coin, then quickly walked away. Daniel slowed down. He told himself he couldn't help. He barely had enough for himself. Tomorrow's lunch was already uncertain. But then the homeless man looked up. Their eyes met. There was no begging in his eyes, no anger, just exhaustion and quiet dignity. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He hesitated. His stomach growled. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He walked over. Without saying a word, Daniel opened a paper bag and held out the sandwich. The homeless man stared at it, shocked. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "You don't look like you have much either." Daniel forced a small smile. "I'll manage," he said. "You look like you need it more." The man's hand shook as he took the food. For a moment, he didn't eat. He just looked at Daniel, deeply, carefully, as if trying to see something beyond his face. "Most people don't stop," the man said quietly. "They see dirt, not a human." Daniel shrugged. "I see a man who's hungry." The old man nodded slowly. Before Daniel turned to leave, the man spoke again. "Son," he said, his voice calm but firm, "kindness like yours never disappears. One day, it returns in ways you don't expect." Daniel smiled politely, thinking it was just something people said. He walked away into the rain, unaware that behind him, the homeless man was watching with a look that did not belong to a poor beggar. A look of certainty. Strange things begin to happen. The next morning, Daniel woke up with an empty stomach but a lighter heart. He told himself he'd done the right thing. Still, as he walked to work, his mind kept returning to the homeless man's eyes. There had been something unusual about them. Calm, observant, almost powerful. Daniel shook the thought away. People like him didn't meet powerful men. At the warehouse, the day dragged on as usual. Heavy boxes, loud machines, endless hours. Yet something felt different. During his lunch break, Daniel noticed a black luxury car parked across the street. Its windows were tinted dark. The engine was running. No one stepped out. He stared at it for a moment, then laughed at himself. "You're being paranoid," he thought. But when he returned to work, his supervisor called him into the office. "You've been doing good work lately," the man said, suddenly polite. Daniel blinked. Compliments were rare. "Keep it up," the supervisor added. "Opportunities are opening." Daniel walked out confused. That evening, as he left work, the black car was gone. 2 days passed, then 3. Life continued, but small things kept happening. A stranger held the door for him at a cafe and smiled knowingly. A landlord who had threatened eviction suddenly asked for more time. A coworker whispered, "Someone important asked about you today." Daniel's unease grew. One night, he stopped at the same street corner where he had met the homeless man. The spot was empty. No cardboard sign. No blanket. No trace he had ever been there. A cold chill ran down Daniel's spine. Maybe he moved on, he told himself, or maybe he didn't finish the thought. That night, Daniel barely slept. Then came the knock. It was early morning when a deep, heavy sound echoed through his small apartment. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel sat up in bed, heart racing. He checked the time. 6:12 a.m. Another knock, louder this time. He looked through the peephole and froze. Outside stood two men in black suits, earpieces in place. Behind them, parked along the narrow street, 4 black SUVs. Neighbors were already peeking through their curtains. Daniel's hands trembled. Did I do something wrong? Is this a mistake? He opened the door slowly. Daniel Harris, one of the men asked calmly. Yes. Daniel replied, his voice barely steady. You're requested downstairs, the mon said. Someone wants to see you. Daniel swallowed hard. As he stepped outside, his eyes fell on a familiar figure standing beside the first SUV. Clean, well-dressed, confident. It was the homeless man. Only now, there was nothing homeless about him. The truth no one expected. Daniel stood frozen on the sidewalk. The man who had begged for food just days earlier now stood tall beside the SUV. His back was straight. His eyes were sharp. His presence commanded silence. He wore a tailored dark coat, polished shoes, and a calm expression that made the suited men around him look like shadows. Daniel's mind struggled to catch up. Sir, he whispered. The man smiled, the same gentle smile from that rainy night, but now it carried authority. Good morning, Daniel, he said warmly. I hope we didn't frighten you. Daniel's heart pounded. I don't understand. The man gestured toward a vehicle. Please, ride with me. There's something I need to explain. Neighbors stared openly now. Phones were raised. Whispers spread. Daniel hesitated, then stepped into the SUV. Inside, the leather seats were soft. The car smelled faintly of wood and polish. This was a world Daniel had only seen in movies. The door closed quietly. The man folded his hands and looked at him. My name is Mr. Adewale, he began. I own several companies across North America and Africa. Daniel's breath caught. Adewale continued, his voice calm. For years, I lived among ordinary people, sometimes as one of them. Daniel frowned. Why would someone like you pretend to be homeless? Adewale's eyes darkened slightly. Because money lies, he said. It shows people comfort, not character. Poverty reveals truth. He leaned forward. That night, I had been sitting there for hours. Dozens passed me. Some insulted me. Some laughed. Most pretended I didn't exist. He looked directly at Daniel. You stopped. Daniel swallowed. I just gave you food. Adewale shook his head slowly. No, he said. You gave me dignity. Silence filled the car. Adewale reached into his coat and placed a folder on the seat between them. Inside were documents, photos, reports. While you slept, Adewale said, my team learned everything about you. Daniel stiffened. Relax, Adewale added gently. You've done nothing wrong. He pointed to a photo of Daniel at the warehouse. You work hard. You help your co-workers. You pay your debts when you can. And despite having almost nothing, you still shared. Daniel's eyes burned. I don't understand why you're telling me this, he said quietly. Adewale smiled again. Because the world rewards noise, he replied, but I reward kindness. The SUV slowed. Through the window, Daniel saw a tall glass building ahead. Security guards opened the gate without question. Adewale turned to him one last time before they stepped out. Daniel, he said, his voice firm but kind, what happens next will change your life. Daniel nodded, barely breathing. The car stopped. The doors opened. And Daniel stepped into a future he never imagined, the reward he never asked for. Daniel followed Mr. Adewale into the glass building. The lobby was vast and quiet, with marble floors and a ceiling so high it made Daniel feel small. People in suits moved with purpose, but the moment they saw Adewale, they stopped. Some nodded respectfully. Others stepped aside immediately. Daniel's chest tightened. This is real, he thought. This is actually happening. They entered a private elevator that rose silently toward the upper floors. Adewale stood with his hands behind his back. Daniel, he said calmly, tell me something. If you had more money, what would you do? Daniel hesitated. No one had ever asked him that seriously before. I'd pay my debts, he said honestly. I'd help my mother. And I'd like to open a small business someday. Adewale smiled. Good, he replied. You didn't say cars or mansions. That tells me everything. The elevator doors opened into a private office overlooking the city. Adewale motioned for Daniel to sit. He placed another folder on the desk. Inside were bank statements, contracts, and official documents. I'm clearing your debts, Adewale said simply. Every last one. Daniel's head spun. Your rent is paid for the next 2 years, Adewale continued. And this, he slid a document forward, is seed funding for your business. Daniel's hand shook. I didn't help you for this, he whispered. I know, Adewale said softly. That's why you deserve it. Adewale leaned forward. But money alone is not my gift to you, he continued. I'm offering you mentorship, a place in my organization, not as charity, but as trust. Tears blurred Daniel's vision. For years, he had felt invisible, replaceable, forgotten. Now, someone had seen him. Why me? Daniel asked. Adewale's voice was firm. Because when you had nothing, he said, you still chose to give. He stood and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Never forget this moment, Adewale added. The world will test you again. Daniel nodded, unable to speak. As they left the building later that day, the sun felt brighter. The city sounded different. Daniel glanced back at the glass tower. Just days ago, he had been counting coins for dinner. Now, his future had changed forever. But the greatest lesson was still ahead. What kindness really returns. Months passed. Daniel's life no longer looked the same, but the man he was remained unchanged. He still woke up early, still worked hard, still spoke kindly to everyone he met. With Mr. Adewale's guidance, Daniel opened a small logistics business. It started modestly, 1 truck, 1 contract, but it grew steadily. More importantly, Daniel built it with the same values that had once cost him his dinner. When new employees joined, Daniel treated them with respect. When someone struggled, he remembered where he came from. One evening, after a long day, Daniel found himself walking past the same restaurant where everything had begun. The corner looked the same. The lights, the noise, the hurried crowd. But this time, someone else sat against the wall. A young man, thin, nervous, hungry. Daniel stopped. He didn't think twice. He walked over, sat beside him, and offered food. The young man looked up in disbelief. Why would you help me? He asked quietly. Daniel smiled. Because someone once helped me, he replied. From across the street, a black sedan idled. Inside, Mr. Adewale watched silently. He did not step out. He did not intervene. He simply nodded. Because the test had been passed, not once, but forever. Glowing Star Final Moral for Narration. Kindness is not about reward. It is about character. You may never know who you are helping. You may never see the result immediately. But every act of kindness returns. Sometimes as help, sometimes as opportunity, and sometimes as a chance to become the person you were meant to be. Treat people well, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. If this story touched your heart, remember to like, share, and subscribe, because kindness is a story worth spreading.